Jedi and Spartans from Halo are both extremely similar. They were both kidnapped as children, forced to train in harsh and unforgiving conditions. They're both capable of superhuman feats of speed, strength, agility, and reflexes, and both of them boost the morale of the rank and file troops that are on their side. So with all of these commonalities, it would be interesting to run a thought experiment to see what would happen if the Jedi from Star Wars were to interact with the Spartans from Halo. So in this thought experiment, we're going to explore what if Halo Reach had Jedi. So obviously these two are completely different fictional franchises, and we have to cook up a reason for why they would interact with each other. So let's just say that the astromech droids were having a problem with their software, and as a result there was a glitch, and Anakin and Obi-Wan are in their Jedi fighters, and they're in outer space about to go to a separatist planet to fight another battle, when all of a sudden the hyperdrive malfunctions, they get sucked into a wormhole, they get spat out in the Epsilon Eridani system floating above planet Reach. With their engines totally destroyed, they have no way of getting back home, and they crash land on the planet itself. So I think that that's enough of a background to explain why these characters would be interacting with each other. So let's begin our narrative. Chapter 1, The Winter Contingency. So this begins the exact same way as the events in the beginning of Halo Reach, with the Visegrad relay being destroyed and the UNSC suspecting that it's insurrectionist activity. They send the Spartans to go investigate. However, Anakin and Obi-Wan crash landed nearby. They're already on the scene. They're looking at all the dead bodies, and they're absolutely horrified, and they suspect that it's separatist activity attacking innocent human beings. And that is when the Spartans show up from Noble Team. And this first interaction is actually kind of awkward and a bit confrontational, because when Obi-Wan sees them, because their armor looks similar to clone trooper armor, he just assumes that they're an elite squad of clone troopers that are reporting in. So he introduces himself as General Kenobi and starts trying to give orders like he owns the place. And that is when Carter pushes back and says, "Hey, you're not with the UNSC. Who are you to tell us what to do? You guys look like a couple of bums on the street. We have no idea who you are." And so their first interaction is kind of tense, but it gets cut short when Anakin senses a disturbance in the Force. Nearby, some jackals and grunts are torturing an almost dead UNSC trooper, and some skirmishers are fighting over who gets to eat the dead one. Anakin sees this, and he immediately flies into a rage, because the grunts with their face masks and their primitive animal-like behavior kind of remind him of the Sand People, and the way they're torturing these people reminds him of what happened to his mother. So without even thinking, he activates his lightsaber, leaps over there, slices the grunts in half, kicks the skirmishers off the cliff, and force chokes the jackals to death. The elites notice this and try to attack Anakin from behind, and that is when Obi-Wan brings their life to a crashing halt, literally. He uses the Force to pick up the purple weapon crates that are in the area that the Covenant brought with them, and he hurls them at the Covenant so hard that it ends up squashing them to death. Upon seeing this, Carter is absolutely amazed at their abilities. A couple of spirit dropships and phantoms drop off more troops to the area, but Noble Team quickly mows them down, and Anakin and Obi-Wan basically play a support role at this point. So they all load up in Warthogs and whatever other vehicles are around in the area, and they head towards the Visegrad relay. On the ride there, Anakin and Obi-Wan talk about the Galactic Republic and where they are from, and the Spartans talk about the UNSC and what they're fighting for. So they basically spend all this time trading stories and getting an understanding of each other's backgrounds. When they get to the Visegrad relay, it plays out way differently than in the original Reach continuity, because this time, since Anakin is with them and he's an expert offensive duelist, he actually ends up getting in a sword fight with the Zealot and slices off the Zealot's arm and kicks him against the wall. That is when they try to interrogate him at gunpoint, and the elite won't budge. Obi-Wan even tries Jedi mind trick. Again, the elite will not budge. And that is when Anakin says, "I've had enough of this crap," and he picks up the elite with the Force chokes him to within an inch of his life, and forces him to tell all of his secrets to the UNSC and the Jedi. His secrets include the Long Night of Solace, the teleportation spire, where the Covenant troops are, where all the Corvettes are located, and even what they are looking for on this planet. So after they extract all of that information, the Spartans go to arrest the elite and turn him in, and that is when the elite, realizing that he's cornered, takes a plasma grenade out of his pocket and tries to kamikaze the group and take them out with him. But the Jedi are so fast that they're actually able to jump out of the way and not get caught in the explosion, and the Spartans will all lock their armor so that they survive the explosion as well. The only character that dies here would be the scientist and the scientist's daughter, because they were caught in the explosion and didn't have super reflexes to make it out in time. Chapter 2, Suord Bass. Suord Bass goes a lot differently than last time, because this time we have a full complement of Spartans as well as 2 Jedi. So while Noble Team is out getting the turret up and getting the comms array back online, Anakin and Obi-Wan actually go to the basement of Suord Bass and discuss a plan with Dr. Halsey for how to get rid of the Long Night of Solace and make it no longer a threat. So after they discuss their plan in great detail and rehearse it time after time again to make sure that the Jedi are prepared, they get ready to make their final preparations, which brings us to Chapter 3, Nightfall. This pretty much does not happen at all like in the original continuity, because in this case the UNSC already know about the Long Night of Solace and the Second Fleet of Homogeneous Clarity. There's no need to discover the spire. They already know where it is, and so they spend all of that time planning for Chapter 4, the Tip of the Spear, which goes a lot more successfully than in game, because in this game we see a lot fewer UNSC deaths because the Jedi are so agile and they're able to sense where the enemies are and help the UNSC plan a better offensive. But more than that, the UNSC ends up engaging the Covenant as a diversionary tactic, while Noble Team and the Jedi go into the teleportation spire. Basically, they go there with Cortana in a microchip. Anakin and Obi-Wan use Jedi mind trick to force a grunt to press the button that teleports all of them into the Long Night of Solace. So Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Noble Team, as well as Cortana in a chip, go into the Long Night of Solace. When they get into the landing bay, they are surrounded by hordes of Covenant. However, given Anakin and Obi-Wan's supernatural reflexes, as well as the above-average reflexes of the Spartans, this entire room is able to be cleared in about a minute or two, and it's basically a meat grinder of nothing but Covenant corpses and blood strewn as far as the eye can see. They find a nearby terminal, and they enter Cortana into the terminal. Cortana takes control of the ship's artificial intelligence, and then she controls the whole ship. When she does that, she ends up turning off the oxygen everywhere in the ship but the bridge and engineering. And what this does is it pretty much kills all the Covenant on board instantly without the Jedi and Noble Team having to fight them off. The only ones that really survive this are the engineers, because they don't breathe oxygen anyway. Whichever grunts happen to have their masks on survived, and the elites that were jetpack elites ended up surviving as well, because they also wear an oxygen mask. Well, because of all the elites that died who didn't have any mask on, the grunts basically freak out and start mass suiciding, and that makes even more dead bodies litter the ship. Chapter 5, Long Night of Solace. Now that the UNSC controls the Long Night of Solace, and all of their frigates have survived. The Grafton has survived, the Savannah survived, all of the long swords and all of the pelicans and all of the sabers have survived. This is an absolute blowout when you take all of that into consideration, and the orbital defense platforms and the Long Night of Solace. All of this, the Long Night of Solace has been taken over by humans. So when the Fleet of Particular Justice arrives, like they did at the end of the mission Long Night of Solace, the humans destroy them. Now, the humans do take some heavy losses. The humans do suffer a bit, but they absolutely win the war. However, they win the war at a great cost, because now the Long Night of Solace, who saw the majority of the action, is heavily damaged. But the humans are actually able to put up a good resistance, and Reach does not fall to the Fleet of Particular Justice whatsoever. Chapter 6, Exodus. In the original video game, Exodus, when you played this mission, you played as Noble Six, rescuing humans from New Alexandria. Well, in this case, since Noble Six is busy in space fighting the Covenant, you actually have Blue Team. That's John, Fred, Linda, and Kelly. They are the ones that are actually tearing it up on the ground and rescuing humans left and right. And pretty much all of the human ships that were evacuation ships end up escaping Reach. You don't have any getting shot down by a Corvette like you saw in the mission Exodus, because basically the UNSC has cleaned up the skies and cleaned up space and gotten rid of the Covenant. Chapter 7, High Charity. Just when the humans think that they can take a breather and that they've got this war won, boom, High Charity drops in from slip space and hovers over the planet. This is where things start to go sideways, because at that time, Anakin and Obi-Wan, as well as Noble Team in their initial attack, managed to capture the Prophet of Stewardship from the Fleet of Particular Justice, and they basically use his life as a bargaining chip to try to negotiate with the high command of the Covenant in High Charity. So the Prophet of Stewardship tries to contact the Prophet Hierarchs Truth, Mercy, and Regret, and they all pretty much give him the shaft and say, screw you, you failed, your life is worthless, you can stay with those humans and die for all I care. Because we got to think about it, the Prophet of Truth is a sadistic character. He let two of his other prophets die on purpose just so he could take over, and that's basically what we would see here if the Jedi tried to use a prophet as a bargaining chip. But that's not all. The Long Night of Solace is substantially damaged because it got most of the action in the fight against the Fleet of Particular Justice. All of the ships basically targeted it because it was the biggest threat. And that's actually why the Fleet of Particular Justice lost, because while they were targeting the Long Night of Solace, they were getting picked off by the orbital defense platforms. So the Spartans, the Jedi, and Cortana all decide to board a Phantom that was inside of the docking bay, and they basically abandoned the ship before activating the self-destruct sequence. So Long Night of Solace is out of the picture at this point. Meanwhile, back on High Charity, tensions are flaring between the elites and brutes, because basically the brutes see the elites as incompetent at this point. They lost the Long Night of Solace, they lost the Fleet of Particular Justice, and they failed to capture Reach. The brutes are basically saying to the prophets, look, these puny elites couldn't even stop some pathetic humans. Why don't you let us be in charge for a change? And since this is something that the Prophet of Truth wanted to do all along, he obliges and immediately starts demoting all of the elites and putting the brutes in their authority. And this pretty much goes the same as what we saw in the events of Halo 2 and Halo 3. Absolute civil war, and the elites and brutes basically start killing each other. So those ships that were about to attack Reach actually start attacking each other, and High Charity and its surrounding fleet become an absolute civil war zone. The humans realize that if this fighting continues, especially over their planet, they may not survive, because whoever wins the war could still be a threat to them, so they want to figure out how to end the battle quickly. So that's when Obi-Wan goes back to the Prophet of Stewardship and tries to use the Force with Jedi mind trick to interrogate him and find out about his fleet and how to defeat it and find out about High Charity. But because prophets are strong-willed, strong-minded individuals, the Prophet of Stewardship's able to easily defeat Obi-Wan's Jedi mind trick and pretty much blow him off. And that's when Anakin walks into the room and does his typical Force choke interrogation. And that is when the Prophet of Stewardship tells them everything about the reactor room in High Charity, about what High Charity consists of, about the access codes to get past the defense fleet and get into the city. Everything they need to know. And that's when the bullfrogs come in and arrest the Prophet of Stewardship and take him to a bunker at the bottom of Suord Bass to basically throw him in the brig and lock him up and interrogate him for any further information that would be useful to the UNSC before he's going to be executed eventually. Meanwhile, Anakin, Carter, and Kat are discussing an idea of how to take out High Charity. Anakin has experience blowing up space stations, and Kat comes up with an interesting idea of using the Savannah's slip space drive as a bomb to basically destroy High Charity. Remember, in the original continuity, she was going to do this against the Long Night of Solace, so it only makes sense that she would think to do this if High Charity were to drop in overreach. So they discuss it. Carter thinks it's a weird idea, but he thinks it could work, so he tells the general, and the general gives them permission to do it. So now they pretty much all go towards this mission, and this is all hands on deck. They take a Phantom that's loaded with Noble Team, Blue Team, Anakin and Obi-Wan, Cortana, and the Bullfrog ODSTs for good measure, and they basically go to High Charity with the slip space bomb inside of the Phantom, and they plan on using it to detonate the station. When they land on High Charity, they see elites and brutes strangling each other to death, shooting each other with plasma rifles, gutting each other with energy swords and brute shots. It's a bloody scene, but all of the fighting pretty much allows this team to pretty much run past most of the opposition without even being noticed because they're so distracted fighting each other. This is sort of the equivalent of the mission Gravemind in Halo 2, where there were those parts of the mission where you and your Marines could just stop and watch the elites and brutes go at each other. That's pretty much what's going on here. Because this is the best of the best fighting for the defense of humanity, they fight with all they have, and they have absolutely no problems fighting their way into the Prophet Hierarch's private quarters, their conference room. And that is where they set the slip space bomb. They escape on a stolen Phantom that they find nearby, and the timer goes off and it detonates, teleporting High Charity into pieces, destroying most of the fleet, leading to total victory for the Jedi and the UNSC against the Covenant. Chapter 8, Halo. Given that the humans have had an opportunity of peace in this time to rest and rebuild their forces, they're actually able to build the UNSC Infinity much earlier. The elites formed a ceasefire with the humans. This is not the same as the alliance that they formed in Halo 3. This is basically the elites saying, hey, we just lost most of our troops and we don't want to die, so we're going to agree not to shoot you if you agree not to shoot us. The UNSC and Oni, as well as Cortana, help Anakin and Obi-Wan rebuild their ships as well as their astromech droids so that they can escape and go back to their own galaxy. And the UNSC actually ends up advancing their technology from learning about the astromech droids and the miniaturized hyperdrives that these ships have. However, on the way back to the Star Wars galaxy, Anakin and Obi-Wan discuss Anakin's dark side outbursts, and that's when Anakin talks about all of the stress he's under, including what happened to his mother, what happened to the Sand People, and the fact that he's got a pregnant wife at home that he's concerned about. And this is where Anakin actually is surprised because Obi-Wan responds very positively and says, hey bro, that is your business. Your wife and your family is your business. I don't agree with everything that the Jedi Order does. And so Anakin and Obi-Wan actually grow closer, and this is able to prevent Anakin from turning to the dark side when he gets back to his universe. Meanwhile, eventually, the UNSC discovers Installation 04, and they go there on a scientific expedition, not a depressing zombie apocalypse. And that is the end of our story for now of what if Halo Reach had Spartans. Let me know what you think in the comments.